Minister, just on the Pacific Islands Forum, are you able to say what discussion was had between leaders on the subject of China's push for a regional agreement with 10 Pacific Island states? Was there any sort of agreement that the Pacific Islands Forum should take carriage of that proposal in any way? And can you also say if there was any discussion on the Solomon Islands security pact with China, and whether any other Pacific leaders expressed any opinions on that?
Well, I won't comment on the internal deliberations that took place in the room because they're confidential, and I'm not someone who'll be leaking text messages from other leaders, nor leaking confidential discussions. What is reflected, though, in the communique makes that very clear. That the communique makes it clear that we are responsible as the Pacific family for security issues, and it makes it clear that we respect sovereign nations' rights to make decisions, but clearly in the discussions that have taken place, and if you look at the comments that were made by Prime Minister Sogavare, he made it very clear his view that there would not be a base in the Solomons. He can't have been more clear about that. His public comments are there, and his private comments certainly reflected that. I, of course, put Australia's position as you would expect me to do, but the facts speak for themselves. There was an attempt publicly when the Chinese Foreign Minister visited the region to get a sign-up to various elements, and it didn't happen. The facts are there, and therefore you'd be aware of what the Pacific Island states thought about that. Our Pacific Island friends, I think, the Pacific family, and our partnerships have been strengthened by this meeting. It was really constructive, the way that we dealt with each other. Building up a relationship of trust isn't something that happens though at a meeting. This has happened over decades. Australia has been the security partner of choice since the Second World War. We remain so. We remain so in terms of our relationships with the Pacific, including programs like this are how you build those relationships and strengthen them. And I'm very positive about going forward.
Minister, would there be a rearrangement between Fiji and Australia?
Well, what we have is we'll have an increase in the way that the Pacific Australia Labour Mobility Scheme operates, and we have said that we'll have more flexibility. So, for example, previously it was excluded for families to join. Now, if you're participating in a scheme, working in aged care for 4 years, a barrier to that, or something that might shorten your workforce participation in Australia, is not seeing your kids for 4 years. A practical measure that we will have, and one that shows that we respect people from the Pacific and their contribution that they are making, is to allow families to be able to apply to join in Australia for that period of time. That to me seems to be a common sense move. It's something that we put forward during the election campaign. It's something that we'll implement. The other thing that we will do is to have a specific visa for permanent migration to Australia. We committed to that during the election campaign, and we'll be rolling that out during the coming period as well.
When do you hope to roll these things out? And also during the election, you also pledged to have 24-hour nurses in aged care homes. When do you hope to implement that policy? Will it be this year? And do you expect foreign workers to fill these Australian jobs?
Well, what we're doing is stepping up already. I spoke to the head of the centre here who's looking after this program. One of the reasons why this is happening right now is because of our commitment to 215 minutes of care for people in aged care. Now, that was in accordance with the Aged Care Royal Commission. So what we're seeing is a response, if you like, from the market as well as from non-government organisations to the commitments that we've made in anticipation there will be more workers required. So we're seeing this response. So you're seeing it right now. Right now you are seeing a response of training. Right now we're looking at areas including migration, but also looking at training more nurses. We want this to happen as quickly as possible, and you're seeing here at this facility the real practical result of our commitments that we made. I remind you, less than, I think, 7 weeks. I think it's 7 weeks tomorrow since the election. It seems a lot longer. But we are moving as a matter of urgency to implement all of our commitments. So just our friend from Fiji here too. And then.
On the visa again,
Sure.
people are complaining about the length of visa processing time. Some waits on for months without any reply. Will the Australian government?
You're right. The time for getting replies and responses to visas is far too long. It's something that we have inherited from our former government, left a massive backlog of visa applications. It's something that we have put people from other parts of the public service on to try and clear that backlog. We need to work on it, and I'd through you say to our friends in Fiji who have visa applications in, firstly to give an apology because that shouldn't happen, but secondly to say we're working on it and to encourage them to be patient, and we are working on shortening that time to as short as possible. John?
Prime Minister, as a result of this meeting, including your discussions with Mr Sogavare, do you believe that China will have less influence in this region?
Look, it's up to others to comment about other countries' influence. What I would say about our influence is that Australia's influence, which historically has been a country of great significance to the region, has been enhanced by this meeting, and that is important. The relationships that we built at the meeting, I went along, I said I would listen, we did listen. I said I'd show respect, I did show respect. The fact that we had a meeting ended just after 3 p.m, as opposed to argy-bargy about whether climate change was real or not until 10 o'clock at night, which is what occurred on the last occasion, was something that was reflected by all of our Pacific Island friends and leaders who were very positive about Australia's role at the meeting. They were positive, and it was reflected as well in the communique. They welcomed Australia's new position on climate change. I've been invited to every one of our neighbours as well, and that of course will be filled by my minister here, Minister Conroy, will be trying to visit each of the countries within the first 12 months of the formation of the new government. That's really important. Well, these things, as you know, I'd rather not comment on someone else's influence, but these things are all relative. By definition, if Australia is increasing our influence, then that has an impact. Thanks very much.